Are you writing your code in the wrong way in Databricks? Well, if you're coming directly into the interface in Databricks and you're writing your code here, then you are probably missing out. I work with lots of different companies and I find half the time they're still coming directly into Databricks and coding here. A much better way to develop your code would be to develop your code in an IDE, something like Visual Studio Code. If we develop our code here, then we can make use of all the modern development techniques, such as using things like asset bundles. We can much more easily run our unit tests. We can manage our dependencies. We can manage our project organization, and we can integrate with other tools. The biggest benefit out of that is the asset bundles, which is a fairly new feature at the time of writing that a lot of companies are not yet using, but you should do. And if you're not sure what asset bundles are, then I'll be doing a full video on how to set up asset bundles. So if you're interested in that, then hit subscribe and you'll find that video shortly. To get ourselves set up with this, the first thing you need to do is download and install Visual Studio Code. And once you've done that, the next thing you need to do is make sure you've got Python installed. So to know what version of Python we want, we need to go back to our Databricks and look at our compute node. If we click on our cluster here, you can see that this particular cluster is using version 15.4, and that corresponds to us needing to install Python 3.11. So we should go ahead, go and install Python. So let's search for Python. I'm on Windows on a 64-bit machine, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. And click install. We'll also add that to our Python path. So that's Python installed. Now it's very important to make sure that the version of Python you've got installed does correspond to the cluster that you've got set up in your Databricks environment. Otherwise you'll have difficulty connecting between the two. So do make sure that the two line up with each other. Now we've got that installed, we will go back to Visual Studio Code, and the next thing we need to do is to install Databricks. So we'll come over to our extensions, we'll search for Databricks. There's Databricks there, so we click on that, and let's get that installed. Now you see we get a new logo on the left hand side here for Databricks, and that's going to enable us to connect to our instance of Databricks and work normally as if we were working through the website. So let's configure our connection. So we click Create Configuration, and you simply need to put in the address of your Databricks. So if we pop back here, go to my Databricks, I'm going to copy that, pop that in there, select it, and then there's several ways that we can authenticate. The easiest way is just to use OAuth authentication. That means we log in via the website. We can also do other things like we can create personal access tokens, etc. But the easiest thing is just to log in on our website. So let's click that, and we'll give ourselves a name for this connection. Let's say it's Pads Demo. Click Enter, and you can see that's redirected us to the website where we're now logged in. So let's pop back to Visual Studio Code again. And we can see we've now got this configuration over here. So we've effectively logged into our Databricks environment remotely. There's a few more things we need to do. So first of all, we need to select a cluster. So I've got a cluster installed on my Databricks environment, and we can select that. That's what we'll be running and connecting to when we run our code locally. The next thing that I want to do is to set up an environment. So I'm going to come to the environment here. Now it's automatically set to the base environment, but I don't want that. I want my own one. So let's click this Change Python Environment button, and let's create a new one. And we simply need to select venv. We'll select the version of Python we want, so we want Python 3.11. The next thing we need to do is to install our Databricks Connect, so let's click install that. So that's now installed. Then one last thing to do, let's click continue here. And that's it. We're pretty much everything set up that enables us to connect to our Databricks environment remotely, but work within Visual Studio Code. You can see we've got a cluster option here, so we can come in here and we can start our cluster. So we click this play button here, that will now request that our cluster starts up so that we can start using it. And while that starts up, let's pop over and have a look at our files. And within our folder, we've automatically had our folders set up so that it looks like the beginning of an asset bundle. And we can put all our files in here and work with them there. I'm going to copy a couple in that I've made earlier. Now we can see we've got our files here. So let's open one of these up. And we can now work with this file as if we were working in the interface in Databricks. So if we go back to our Databricks tab, we can see our cluster still starting up. But once that's started, then we can run our code as normal. Now, while we're waiting for that to run, you can see there's a few more things we need to do. We need to select a kernel, so let's select Python environments, go to our Python 3.11 environment that we already have set up. We'll allow that. Let's install the kernel package. So we need this if we're running notebooks rather than Python files. So that's that installed now. And if we pop down here and do shift return to run that box, we can see that that has now run, and that's using this cluster. Now that is actually running even though it's still showing that it hasn't refreshed yet. And that's it. We can now work in Visual Studio Code and connect to our Databricks cluster. We can do all the things we'd normally do, and we get the added benefit of being able to do things like work with asset bundles, being able to more easily unit test our code, integrate our CI/CD processes, and make use of all the other features that Visual Studio Code has. So I'd highly recommend that you start working in this way rather than going directly into the Databricks environment and typing your code there.